Nanette, for that very kind introduction. And on behalf of everyone, thank you and your team for sponsoring and coordinating today's conference. It's really been amazing. Also, while we're at it, let's give a nice round of applause or jazz hands or whatever way you choose to say thank you to the presenters who came before me today. They all did just an amazing job, so thank you for that. Now, my goal today is to make your brain hurt at least a little. And that really shouldn't be too difficult since I'm the last presenter of a stellar lineup. But we know that the mind stretched and pulled by the power and potential of a big idea never fully returns to its original shape. So today I want you to join me on a journey to stretch our minds about leadership. And I'll warn you up front, the ideas might not fit neatly into the models that we've all known or grown up with. And that really is okay, because if an idea doesn't sound at least a little strange to us, then it really isn't that different. I believe we'd all agree that the goal of leadership hasn't changed. It is and always has been to influence the actions and outcomes of others to deliver positive results. And I think we'd also agree that the context and an environment in which we do that work today is different, certainly than the recent past, and it continues to change. David Foster Wallace told this story at a commencement address a few years back. Two young fish were swimming along and encountered an old fish. Now, the old fish swims up to them and says, "How's the water?" The two young fish swim on their way, and then one of them says to the other, "What the hell is water?" Well, the water today is complexity and uncertainty. And the big idea is the way that we've traditionally thought about and taught leadership doesn't fit for today's world and today's water. Back in March of 2020, just a couple of weeks into the pandemic, I was a guest on a podcast, and the host said, "So Randy, you're the change and disruption guy. When do we return back to normal?" My instinctive response in the moment was, we won't and they won't. There is no more new normal. There's only a new next. It was one of those moments, I don't know if you've had them or not, where you listen to the words coming out of your mouth and you think, wow, that's pretty good. I should write that down. And then the chat on his feed blew up, and everyone sort of said in a very positive way, that's it, that's right, that's what we're facing. This is a new next. So I did what any content creator would do. I called my IP lawyer as soon as we were done and trademarked New Next. But you see, the new next isn't about the pandemic. It's about realizing that we are at an inflection point where there are so many changes happening and factors that are out of our control that we live and operate in a world of perpetual new next moments. The pandemic reminded us that catastrophic events can happen at any time, and there's not anything we can do about it. Well, that's not new. Anyone who's lived through a hurricane or a tornado, or like me in the Texas snowmageddon of 2021, knows that that stuff happens. In the last 9 months, however, artificial intelligence and ChatGPT have made technology a big focus for us all. But really, any of these factors can force us into a new next at any moment. And in that moment, the leader's job is still the same: to get your teams working together to continue to deliver positive results, to change more quickly, to be more responsive and resilient, and bring people with you to have them feel included as partners. I began challenging my own thinking about leadership right after Thanksgiving in 2022, because I sensed that the old ways we were thinking and teaching leadership no longer worked as well as we needed today. Now, I don't know, maybe you felt the same thing, that those old ways just don't seem to be 100% there. Well, I'll ask you to stay with me here, because here's where it starts to head off in maybe a little different direction. The way we think about leadership is rooted in order. It's the 6 steps, the 4 levels. It's very linear, and it's almost mechanical in its approach. Well, I grew up in that thinking. I've been doing this work for a long time. All this gray hair you're seeing, it isn't painted in for effect. I'm not trying to look older. But this is how leadership and organization development have been taught ever since I've been in this business. And I came to the conclusion that it's largely unproductive for today because we're swimming in different water. So I went on a search, and several days of just head down searching, and that search led me to these 4 men: Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Max Planck, and Leonard Susskind. Now, Einstein's general theory of relativity taught us about gravity and the space-time continuum. It explains how big things work in our world. Bohr and Planck, on the other hand, were leaders in quantum theory, and they explained how small things like particles and waves work. Now, more important, they showed us that changes in small things have an enormous influence on how big things happen. Now, the idea became popularized in the butterfly effect. Big things and small things have an impact on each other and on the world as we know it. That leads us to Leonard Susskind, a Stanford professor who, along with others, combined the big and the small into string theory, which postulates that, for now at least, there are 10 dimensions of reality that operate simultaneously, and they're all interconnected. A change in one affects a change in all of them, and together they change the whole. It's the way the world works, and it's the way organizations and teams work too. Big things like how we're organized and how we operate, as well as how we do change and transformation, have an impact on small things like a leader's individual credibility and interpersonal relationships. The best leaders, I believe today, operate in dimensions too. Not steps, not levels, but dimensions. As of today, there are 6 that have been identified, and that could change. For instance, it's too early to tell if the rise of AI and robotics will require other dimensions in the future. But as of right now, 3 of the dimensions focus on small things like personal leadership, interpersonal leadership, and to a large degree, developmental leadership, because it happens almost on a one-to-one basis. 3 also focus on big, or at least bigger things like organizational leadership and how we operate, change leadership, and transformational leadership. There are people who talk about change and transformation interchangeably, and I see them as different. We can change without transforming, but we can't transform without fundamental changes to multiple parts of the business, and that really distinguishes the two. But in the end, the ability to master all 6 of the dimensions is the ultimate secret to building and sustaining a culture that can flourish in the uncertainty and complexity of today. It's also the secret to making sure that uncertainty doesn't devolve into chaos. You see, chaos is the absence of all order. And we typically think of crisis and chaos as interchangeable, but that isn't necessarily true. Likewise, uncertainty doesn't have to lead to chaos if, and this is a big if, the leader successfully utilizes all 6 dimensions simultaneously to keep the team focused, engaged, and trusting the direction where we're headed. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, well, okay, that's interesting, and it's probably a little weird. And remember, I told you that the goal is to make your brain hurt a little bit, so hopefully that's happening right now. And you might also be thinking, so what? I have products to build, I have things to ship, I have poor performers that need coaching, I need teams that fight each other all the time, I'm dealing with high turnover, quality problems, and the list keeps going and going and going. And you might be even saying to yourself, I don't have time to think about dimensions. Well, I get it. The day-to-day operational and leadership challenge we all face are real. But remember, the water has changed. To make it through a world of perpetual new next moments, we'll have to execute today, lay the foundation for tomorrow, and bring people with us on a journey where we can't clearly see how to get to the end point. Now, this is the point where we expect presentations to include specific prescriptive action items. And we want our list of steps or our levels to go through, and we can't help it. We're sort of thinking that way as humans, and that's the way we've always done it. And trust me, I want to give them to you. I really do want to give them to you. But you see, that sort of defeats the premise, doesn't it? Because the growth and change and transformation we need and want doesn't occur in preordained steps. There are, however, some suggestions I can make. And you can think about these, work on them, chew on them, and then use them as you wish. Here's the first one. I think we all have to become comfortable with uncertainty to prevent chaos. You see, we want as leaders to have the answers. We'll need to be better, however, at having the right questions to ask. You see, it's a truth that I've learned in my life that the quality of the answers I receive are in direct proportion to the quality of the questions I ask. Now, on top of that, we have to be 100% aligned on purpose. We have to be consistent and aligned on those choices that we need to make every day that make us into a nimble team. We'll have to be curious, and we'll have to rely on the strength of our relationships to sustain and pull us through, because uncertainty requires us to lean on others. The second idea is this: be aware. The way you act and perform in one dimension of leadership affects the influence you have in all dimensions of leadership. I think we have to keep that in mind in every situation and interaction. Now, Rebecca told us earlier that Mary Poppins received the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1964. Well, in 2022, the Academy Award went to a movie titled Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But when I Googled the description for this movie, I found this: when an interdimensional rupture unravels reality, an unlikely hero must channel her newfound powers to fight bizarre and bewildering dangers from the multiverse as the fate of the world hangs in the balance. Well, guess what, folks? That's leadership in the new next. Using the powers of every dimension in every situation all the time. It's how we stretch and grow our minds and swim in the new water. Thanks for letting me join you on this National Leadership Development Day. See you soon.